wish is that the people of Bikini Bottom will stop paying any attention to the inane dribble that is constantly streaming out of this thunderhead's mouth.
Shut your dumb ass up.
2005. A whole new era of SpongeBob SquarePants is introduced to the world following the success of the first SpongeBob movie. Nickelodeon knew this very well, which is why SpongeBob was practically everywhere. The quality of the show was very hit or miss going forward, and it didn't really improve for a few years. Yes, I'm fully aware of what post-movie SpongeBob was like. But there was another era of this show that I remember very well, even though calling it an era is a bit of a stretch. I'm of course talking about the ratings trap era. Not many people on YouTube have talked about this, so I'm gonna cover it, along with some of the most blatant examples from SpongeBob. So let's begin. So, what is a ratings trap? Well, it's pretty simple. It's television's equivalent to clickbait videos on YouTube. Okay, well I wouldn't say they're exactly the same. A ratings trap is essentially hyping up a TV show or movie by using captivating claims or some kind of suspense in order to attract viewers, only to either exaggerate what was promised or not even follow up on the promises at all. SpongeBob isn't even the only show on Nickelodeon to do this. A few of their live-action shows, especially iCarly, use ratings traps too. Nickelodeon almost exclusively used this tactic for SpongeBob's big TV specials. With all that explained, let's look at the first example. SpongeBob, You're Fired. Now, I personally remember when the promos for this special started airing. This was of course the special where Mr. Krabs fired SpongeBob so he can save a nickel. We all knew how cheap Mr. Krabs was by this point, but this was such a phoned-in, lazy reason to fire SpongeBob. Not creative in the slightest. Of course, after being depressed for a while, he tries to work at different restaurants in place of the Krusty Krab, only to find out that he can't cook to save his life. Krabby Patties are the only thing that registers in this man's mind. Even this wasn't a new concept. A bunch of episodes had already done this trope by that point. But of course, the episode ends with the owners of each restaurant fighting over SpongeBob since his ideas end up being good for business, only for a mystery mascot to save him, who turned out to be Squidward. And of course, the Krusty Krab literally can't function unless SpongeBob is there. This is another trope in the show that had been beaten to death by this point. Everything goes back to normal, the end. Overall, this episode wasn't anything to write home about. I feel that this special could have been a lot more, but that's already asking too much considering that this was modern SpongeBob. Anyways, in terms of advertisement, there were tons of promos hyping this special up. Some of them even spoiled certain events that occurred in this episode, so they weren't even surprises at that point. They also claim that SpongeBob is the only employee at the Krusty Krab that ever did anything perfectly, completely ignoring that Jim exists. Also, did the Employee of the Month award only exist after SpongeBob was hired? We never hear about Jim or any other fry cooks getting that award, so that puzzles me. Anyways, I feel like all of the suspenseful promos Nickelodeon made for the special were very much overblown considering how lame the payoff was, but this was a very mild example, so I'll move on to the next one. SpongeBob vs. the Big One might be one of the most underwhelming specials I've ever seen. The main selling points for the special were that it was about surfing and had Johnny Depp in it. Johnny Depp plays this character called JKL, Jack Hakuna Matata or something. I know that this character is portrayed as a legend of the sea and stuff, but Jesus Christ, this character was bland. You bring in a big name like Johnny Depp and give him the most boring, monotone dialogue to say. Literally, the only thing I remember about this special was SpongeBob crashing out around the fire because he couldn't surf, and that's it. Considering Nickelodeon's bad track record with putting guest actors in SpongeBob, I'm not surprised. Now, not all of them were bad. A lot of the older guests were actually good, like Pantera, David Hasselhoff, Lux Interior, and even Patton Oswalt voicing Jim was nice. But then there's ones like David Bowie, who got casted in a musical special only for him to not sing, and Alton Brown was in an episode that had nothing to do with cooking. This special could have been memorable if they had just made JKL more interesting as a character. Even the side characters were more interesting than him. But that's a pretty low bar. Nickelodeon gassed this up as a big deal too, but ultimately, much like the characters in this episode, this one sank. I would also like to point out that even some of the better specials kind of fell into this trap. For example, Have You Seen This Snail? Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad special by any means, but there was one main reason why the suspense doesn't work with SpongeBob. Simply put, there's no continuity in this show. You've probably heard other YouTubers discuss this when it comes to SpongeBob, and it's still true. Despite the dramatic build-up in this episode, we all know that this will all be forgotten by the next episode. but the lack of continuity doesn't take away from what is still a fine special. And now, let's talk about the biggest example of a ratings trap in the history of SpongeBob SquarePants. Truth or Square? So this special was made to mark the 10th anniversary of the show. What it actually did was highlight how much the quality of the show had declined since the beginning. It had a bunch of guest appearances that were just so that Nickelodeon could say those guests were even there, and so they could milk the special some more. A very stupid A plot, a very stupid B plot, and after you finish watching this episode, the last person you're gonna want to see is Patchy the Pirate. He takes up a large chunk of the runtime. This is a personal take of mine, but the worst Patchy segments are the ones when he's not at home. Most of the early Patchy segments had him and Potty at the house doing random stuff, which was good enough, and they didn't take too much time. The later Patchy segments seem to be more nonsensical and random to the point where they don't even add to the main plot. The prime example of this, in my opinion, was Patchy's segment in Atlantis SquarePantis. I really don't think I need to explain this one. The real issues I have with Truth or Square were the amount of things that were promised in the promos. They hyped this up as a special that would answer everybody's questions regarding the show, only for all of it to be completely underwhelming and stupid. SpongeBob and Sandy's wedding ended up being a play. We never hear what the secret formula is, even though that one wasn't that surprising. Some other guy is working in the kitchen before SpongeBob was. Considering the gap between the time Jim left the Krusty Krab and when SpongeBob was hired, it is possible that a few other people worked there for a while, but everything else was just a mess. The only good parts of the special were the stop-motion intro and Pink's song. It was very clear that all of this stuff was done for ratings and nothing more. Thankfully, the 20th anniversary birthday special went on a lot better than this one. And Patchy actually got to meet SpongeBob in that one. But one thing's for sure, the ratings trap era of SpongeBob really did demonstrate how much the franchise had changed. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you very much for watching. Be sure to drop a like on the video, and if you like this one, why not consider subscribing as well? You might also like the other videos too. And be sure to check out my merch store and my artwork. As usual, stay tuned for more, and I'll see you next time.